I talked to my boss and wanted to give him my resignation letter. But he was so shocked. He didn't see it coming at all. So he immediately asked me, how much? As in, what kind of pay increase did I want so that I would stay? Today, I want to share my story of quitting my job. As many of you might know, I quit my job in banking and left the industry a long time ago. I quit my job without having another one lined up, but I did have a plan. I did, although everything turned out differently. And you might be thinking of quitting your job someday to start your own business, work freelance, or simply do a mini retirement. Quitting your job without having another one lined up is something that you need to consider very carefully. But if you want to know how it went for me, then this video is for you. In this video, I want to talk about what I did in the months before I quit my job and some things I wish I'd known or had done before I quit. I'll go through planning my finances, my process of resigning, a testing or experimentation phase I did to see if I really wanted to do this, and how I planned everything. I hope that sharing this experience can be useful for those of you who are also planning to quit your job or your industry altogether soon or sometime in the future. Let's start with planning. I started thinking about quitting my job and leaving banking around 1 year before I resigned, and it took me quite a while to get to that decision. At that time, I was facing a huge dilemma. It was so difficult to decide whether it was time to leave for good or continue my career in banking, which was going very well. There were a few things I considered, and I summarized them in this video up here on how to deal with your dilemmas. So check that out in case you're also stuck trying to make a decision. Then I finally made the decision to quit banking. The plan was to pursue acting full-time and become self-employed. So I decided on a date. I think the target date was around 5 to 6 months after I made that decision, and the deal was sealed. Once I did that, I was so relieved. You know, oftentimes the biggest anxiety comes from not making up your mind. Once I made that decision, I told my parents and some of my best friends, and then it started becoming real. I really got into planning then. I planned what I would do in the months before I quit and in the months after. I knew that after I quit, I would first of all take a whole month off, move apartments, go on vacation, hang out with family and friends. This was the really fun part. I even imagined how I would have coffee in the mall on a Monday instead of working in the office. I planned how I would make progress with acting and started going for more auditions even before I quit. I also planned what kind of business I would run after I quit and decided that I would sell home apparel on Facebook. How all of this worked out, I'll tell you in another video sometime. I noted down all of my plans in a dedicated notebook, which I titled The Year of the Big Resignation, and every week I worked on this plan. I think that without having this clear plan, I would have kept postponing this, and I might still be working in banking now instead of making this video for you right now. What I wish I had known was that, in reality, everything takes much longer. Although you have the seemingly brilliant plan for what you're going to do post-resignation and all the things that you want to achieve, everything will likely take much longer. So this is what I would have done differently. I would have tried to get a head start. Instead of quitting with a plan and executing that plan after resigning, I would have tried to get a head start by doing at least 20% of the things that I planned before I resigned. I know it would have been very difficult to manage everything, but it would have given me a much better start. So in case you are planning to leave your job to start your own thing, I would really recommend you to get a head start and test the waters even more before you quit your job. A really important thing that I also did that got me through the last weeks was to have a countdown ticker in this calendar. Every day I would strike out one more day and note how many days I had left, and that was so satisfying. That brings me to the next thing, which is testing. I did test the thing that I wanted to do, which was acting, before I quit. Almost half a year, I started acting in student films. I started going to auditions. And I also did an acting course in the evenings after work that went from around 7 p.m. to sometimes even 11 p.m. I acted in theater when I was a kid and I loved it, but it was so long ago and I needed to restart acting again and kind of test it. The best way to do that while working was to take that course. Going to acting classes put me in touch with indie filmmakers and helped me to get work afterward. It helped me to get on the ground, really experiencing what it's like to work on set. And once I did that, I knew that this was something that I wanted to keep doing for a very long time. At that time, I wasn't really aware that this was a kind of a testing phase, but now I realize that it was. And I really recommend to anyone who wants to leave their industry to do this as well. Do a testing phase. Test out or experiment with what you plan to do. Don't just assume that you'll like something, but try it out in some form. By the way, if you're new here, it's really great having you here. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, thank you. You guys are just the best. The reason I started this channel, Multiple Careers, was that I wanted to help people build a career that is fulfilling and meaningful. Not just have a job that pays well or that is prestigious, but actually have a career where you can think, this is something actually worth working hard for, where you feel this is something that makes my life have a purpose, something that's meaningful, something that you won't regret doing. Instead of sticking to a job, a career you have just for the sake of it, just to pay for your bills and your lifestyle and settling for second best and end up being full of regrets. The community of this channel are all awesome people who want to make a living and or while doing what they really love. So if you want to be part of this, make sure to subscribe and also set the notification bell to all notifications. So let's move on to the actual process of resigning. The next thing I had to do is to tell my boss. And I really hated having to do that, but it had to be done. So I took a while to think about what I would say to him and then wrote up my resignation letter. It was actually kind of a funny story. We just hosted a big seminar for colleagues from overseas banking offices, around 100 people, and everyone was having dinner together. So after people started going home, I talked to my boss and wanted to give him my resignation letter, but he was so shocked. He didn't see it coming at all. So he immediately asked me, how much? As in, what kind of pay increase did I want so that I would stay? And I don't remember exactly what I answered because I didn't expect that kind of question at all. In any case, he didn't take the letter and he was still busy talking to some of the guests, so he just said, we'll talk about it later. Here I learned a very important lesson. Good employees are oftentimes not appreciated enough until they leave. And I've seen this happening with other people multiple times where they got offered a higher salary once they gave their notice. During my banking career, I got several salary increases, but I never really fought for the salary that I wanted. Until I was about to quit, I realized how much my work was actually worth. So in case you are a high performer at your company, fight for the pay that you want. So back to resigning. A few days went by and it was so hard to catch my boss in his office, and I wanted to hand him the letter in person. He was the head of the business, one level below the CEO, and he was dashing around the office all of the time. So in the end, I caught him in front of an open elevator as he was rushing out, and I kind of pushed the letter into his hand. Then I think he knew that I was serious about leaving and that no amount of money could keep me there. So he accepted the resignation letter, and then he asked, which bank are you going to? And I said, I'm not moving to another bank. I want to start my own business. And then he kind of started giggling. It sounded a bit envious, but humorous at the same time. He said, well, at least it's not banking. Let me know when you're starting your business. I will invest in it. So that was another reply I didn't expect at all. But I was so relieved once I did that. And after that, everything went so easy. Here are a few things that I did. I contacted HR and asked them to write me a reference letter, which stated that I was employed with the bank for this and this time period. And it's really important to have this letter because you might need this in the future, especially if you plan to move countries. Then, almost a week before my last day, I sent out a farewell note per email to everyone in the office, to around 150 people, because I was actually working with all of them. What I did not do, unfortunately, was to make full use of my health insurance. What I should have done was to squeeze out all the remaining benefits, especially dental treatments. After you resign, if you don't get another job, you'll have to buy your own health insurance, which is pretty expensive. So if your company has a good health insurance plan, make sure that you use all of those benefits. By the way, if you want to read my process of resigning, you can also check out a post on my website, and I've linked it down below. In case you don't know yet, I actually have a blog. I just restarted it recently and it has only 7 posts so far, but if you leave me a comment there, I'll try to post more often. The next thing that's really important to plan is finances. Before we get to that, in case you're curious about my career prior to this, everything that led up to this point when I quit and my thought process, you can also check that out in the playlist above here. There are videos about my career in banking, why I left banking, and how I changed careers from banking to filmmaking. So, finances, money, the topic that causes as much excitement as anxiety. About half of my notebook was filled with details about planning my finances. First, I calculated how much money I wanted to leave with. And at that time, it was around $50,000. It was not enough to be financially free, but it was enough to live on it for quite some time. Also, I was planning to live in Indonesia for a while, where living costs are much, much lower than in North America or even Singapore. This is a valuable experience on geo arbitrage, by the way, a topic that I'll talk about another time. And interest rates were around 10% at that time, so that money could generate enough interest income to cover my main expenses. About 6 months plus before my resignation, I still had to save up more money. So I waited until I got my last bonus payment, and it was in the 5 digits. I calculated the rest that I needed to save up, and I divided it by 6 months. I realized I was a bit short, so I quickly got a roommate and rented out a bedroom in my apartment. I know, for whatever reason, I thought that I needed to have my own apartment at that time. So I quickly rented out that room and freed up more money. I ate out less and did very, very little shopping. So by the time I quit, I actually achieved my savings target. You might think that this sounds pretty good, and it actually worked out pretty well. But this is what I wish I had known. If you don't have another income stream, your money will be spent in no time. It practically melts away like butter. So what I would have done differently is to save up much more, much earlier. In case you're planning to quit your job to do your own thing and you don't have an income replacement yet, try to aim for a larger amount of savings. You don't necessarily need to work much longer, but you can try to spend much less. You don't even need to achieve full financial independence, but getting to just partial financial independence, I think, is a brilliant idea, but I'll talk about that in another video. For now, if you're wondering whether to continue being employed, working full-time for a company, or transitioning to work freelance, you can check out this video here where I talk about the differences between working for a company and working freelance. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.